Part 1, The Mercenary's Gamble. Jim Stark leaned back in his chair, boots propped on the ornate desk before him, deliberately projecting an air of casual disrespect. The massive chamber, hewn from black volcanic stone and lit by crimson crystalline fixtures, was designed to intimidate. So was its owner, Lord Carax, who towered over the desk, his obsidian armor-like hide gleaming in the blood-red light. Yellow eyes blazed with barely contained malevolence as he regarded the human mercenary. "You have quite the reputation, human," Carax rumbled, razor-sharp teeth glinting. "They say you'll take any job for the right price." Jim shrugged, maintaining his relaxed posture. "That's the general idea. Though I prefer the term independent contractor to mercenary." A sound like grinding stones emerged from Carax's throat, his version of a laugh. "Very well, contractor. I have a task that requires someone of your particular talents." "I'm listening," Jim said, keeping his voice neutral, though his instincts screamed danger. Lord Carax ruled 3 star systems with methodical brutality. His fortress, Cadail, on Nexus Prime, was a monument to oppression, filled with the spoils of countless conquests. There is a certain data core in a secure facility on Meridian. "I want it," Carax said, his claws clicking against the stone desk. "The reward will be substantial, 5 million credits." Jim whistled softly. "That's a lot of credits for one data core." "The price reflects both the difficulty and the discretion required," Carax replied, his yellow eyes narrowing. "Do you accept?" "What's the catch?" "The facility is operated by the consortium. Their security is formidable." Jim dropped his feet to the floor and leaned forward. The consortium was bad news, a collective of merchant princes who controlled most of the legitimate trade in this sector. Their security forces were top-notch. 10 million, Jim countered. "Half up front." Carax's laugh rattled the crystal fixtures. "You are either very brave or very foolish to negotiate with me, human." 8 million. Payment upon successful delivery. Jim stood, making a show of considering the offer. "Done. Send me the details." As he strode from the chamber, Jim felt Carax's burning gaze on his back. The job would be dangerous, but the payoff would set him up for life. Besides, he'd pulled off harder heists. 3 days later, Jim stood before Carax again, the stolen data core in hand. The mission had gone smoothly, almost too smoothly, in retrospect. "Excellent work," Carax purred, examining the device. "You have proven most efficient." "Thank you. Now, about my payment." Carax's laughter filled the chamber, but this time, there was no humor in it. "Payment? You should count yourself fortunate that I allow you to leave with your life, mercenary." After all, his yellow eyes gleamed with cruel amusement, "How can I trust someone who sells their loyalty for mere credits?" Jim's hand twitched toward his weapon, but a dozen guards materialized from the shadows, weapons trained on him. He forced himself to remain still, though rage burned through his veins. "This isn't good business, Carax," he said quietly. "This is power, human. Something you clearly don't understand." Carax waved dismissively. "Now go, before I reconsider my generosity." Jim turned and walked out, his steps measured and calm despite the fury coursing through him. He had been played for a fool, but this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. As he made his way through the Citadel's winding corridors, his mind was already formulating plans. Carax would pay for this betrayal, and Jim knew exactly how to hit him where it would hurt most. That's when he saw her, the green-skinned beauty he'd noticed during his previous visits. She stood on a balcony overlooking the central courtyard, her elaborate dark green braids catching the light of the setting sun. Even from this distance, he could see the faint marks on her wrists where shackles had once been. An idea began to form. Carax's pride was legendary, and his collection of treasures was well known throughout the sector. What better way to wound that pride than to liberate one of his prized possessions? Jim smiled grimly. He would need to plan carefully, but first, he needed to make a show of leaving. Let Carrick's think he'd won this round. The real game was just beginning. Under cover of darkness, Jim moved silently through the Citadel's residential wing. His earlier departure had been a calculated show, he'd simply switched to stealth gear and circled back. Security was laughably lax in this section. Carrick's arrogance would be his undoing. The slave quarters were opulent by most standards, though the luxury couldn't mask their true purpose. Jim had noticed them during his previous visits, particularly one occupant who seemed to hold special status. He'd seen her only briefly, but that glimpse had told him everything he needed to know about her importance to Carrick's. The door to her chambers yielded easily to his electronic lockpicks. Inside, the room was bathed in soft golden light from bioluminescent crystals. The decor spoke of wealth and refinement, but the subtle security measures betrayed its true nature as a gilded cage. She stood at a window, her back to him, green-skinned fingers tracing patterns on the transparent barrier. Long, dark green hair cascaded down her back, and her golden garments caught the light like captured starfire. "If you're going to kill me," she said without turning, "at least have the courtesy to make it quick." Jim smiled despite himself. "Actually, I'm here to offer you a ride off this rock. No charge." She spun around, golden eyes widening in recognition. "You're the mercenary. The one Carrick's cheated." "News travels fast," he said, moving toward the door and checking the corridor. "Coming?" She didn't move. "Why are you doing this?" "Let's call it professional courtesy. Carrick's needs to learn that actions have consequences." He gestured impatiently. "Look, we can discuss philosophy later, but right now, we need to move." She glanced around the room, then squared her shoulders. "Very well." They moved swiftly through the corridors, Jim leading them through maintenance passages and service tunnels he'd mapped earlier. The woman kept pace easily, her bare feet silent on the metal flooring. They were nearly to his hidden ship when alarms began blaring throughout the Citadel. The woman grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "You fool," she hissed. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Getting us out of here." "Yeah, that was the general idea. You didn't just free a slave. You stole his most valuable possession. He won't stop until he gets me back." Jim guided her toward the landing pad where his ship waited. "That's kind of the point, sweetheart. Now move." They reached the ship just as the first security forces appeared. Jim laid down covering fire while the woman sprinted up the boarding ramp. He followed, sealing the hatch as plasma bolts splashed against the hull. "Strap in," he called, diving for the pilot's seat. The engines were already spooling up, pre-programmed for emergency departure. Through the viewport, he saw Carrick's himself emerge onto a balcony, his roar of rage clearly audible even through the ship's hull. "Find him. Find them both. Burn the planet down if you must." The ship rocketed into the night sky, anti-aircraft fire tracking their ascent. Jim executed a series of evasive maneuvers, his fingers dancing across the controls as they broke atmosphere. "You're insane," the woman said from the co-pilot's seat. "He'll hunt us across the galaxy." "Probably," Jim replied, punching in the coordinates for their first hyperspace jump. "I'm Jim Stark, by the way." "And you are?" She gave him a look that suggested she was questioning his sanity. "Amira. Though I suspect we'll both be dead before names matter." "Such optimism," Jim said as the stars stretched into lines and they made the jump to hyperspace. "Don't worry. I'm good at staying alive. And now that we've got that out of the way," he turned to face her, "maybe you can tell me exactly why you're so special to our friend back there." Amira's golden eyes met his, and for a moment, he saw something beyond fear and anger, a flash of steel that suggested there was far more to her than met the eye. That, she said quietly, is a very long story. Part 2, The Prized Possession. The ship shuddered slightly as they dropped out of hyperspace at a safe distance. Jim had programmed multiple jumps to throw off any pursuit. He kept his eyes on the sensors while waiting for Amira to continue. "I'm not just any slave," she finally said, her voice tight. "I'm the key to Carax's entire empire." Jim raised an eyebrow. "That's a hell of a claim." "My people, the Verdani, developed technology that allows us to interface directly with quantum systems. Carax uses me to control his most advanced weapons, his defense grids, even his financial networks." Her golden eyes hardened. "I'm not his slave. I'm his master key." Jim ran a hand through his hair. "Well, that explains the luxury accommodations. He kept me comfortable because he needed my cooperation. The interface only works if the user is willing." A small, fierce smile crossed her face. "I made sure to lock him out of everything critical before we left." Jim laughed. "Damn, remind me never to piss you off." "Too late for that," she said, but there was a hint of amusement in her voice. "You do realize we'll need somewhere to hide. Carax has informants in every major system." "Already planned for that," Jim replied, pulling up a star chart. "I know a place in the Outer Rim, a remote mining colony called New Haven. The locals there aren't fond of authority figures, and they won't sell us out. They hate Carax more than they love money. Besides," he grinned, "I've done some work for them before. They owe me a few favors." Amira studied the chart thoughtfully. "It might work. For a while, at least." She turned to him. "Why did you really free me? And don't give me that line about professional courtesy." Jim was quiet for a moment. "Because I've seen what happens to people under Carax's rule. Maybe I'm tired of looking the other way." She held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. But you should know this won't be like your usual jobs. Carax won't just send bounty hunters. He'll come himself." "Let him come," Jim said, his voice hard. "I've got a few surprises saved up for that bastard." The ship's computer chimed, signaling their approach to the next jump point. As they prepared for another leap into hyperspace, both knew their adventure was just beginning. New Haven, a rough sanctuary. New Haven lived up to its name, a rough-hewn sanctuary carved into the side of a mineral-rich asteroid. The docking bay was crowded with mining vessels and questionable-looking freighters, their crews a motley assortment of species united in their desire to avoid imperial attention. Jim guided their ship into a designated berth, noting the curious glances from the dockworkers. "Welcome to paradise," he said dryly. "Charming," Amira replied, but her golden eyes were alert, taking in every detail. The local administrator, a burly human named Reeves, met them at the airlock. His weathered face broke into a grin at the sight of Jim. "Stark, you magnificent bastard. Heard you pissed off Carax himself." "News travels fast," Jim replied. "Faster than light, my friend." Reeves's eyes flickered to Amira, widening slightly at her exotic beauty. "And this is the reason Carax is pissed." Jim kept his tone light, but his hand stayed near his weapon. "This is Amira. She's complicated." Reeves whistled low. "Well, you never did anything by halves. Come on, I've got a secure residence set up. Top level, good sight lines." As they walked through the station's winding corridors, Jim noticed Amira's increasing tension. She moved with careful grace, but her eyes darted between shadows and exits with practiced weariness. The apartment was surprisingly spacious, with reinforced walls and its own independent life support system. Jim recognized the security upgrades. This was a safe house, not just accommodation. "I'll leave you to settle in," Reeves said. "But Stark, watch your back. Word's already spreading." After he left, Amira paced the main room restlessly. Jim watched her, noting how the station's artificial lighting caught the subtle variations in her green skin. "All right," he said finally. "What aren't you telling me?" She stopped, turning to face him. "What makes you think I'm holding back?" "Because I've spent my career reading people, and you've got that look, the one that says you're carrying something big." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Perceptive for a human." "I try." Amira moved to the viewport, staring out at the asteroid field. "What do you know about Verdani marriage customs?" The question caught him off guard. "Not much." "Why?" "Among my people, political marriages are common, arranged unions to strengthen alliances, merge bloodlines." She touched the viewport's cold surface. "Before Carrick's took me, I was betrothed to Prince Marin of the Third House." Jim leaned against the wall, processing this. "So, you're royalty?" "The Third House fell to Carrick's forces. Marin escaped. He's been gathering support, building a resistance. But he needed inside information about Carrick's defenses. And that's where I came in." She nodded. "I allowed myself to be captured, used my abilities to gain Carrick's trust while feeding information to the resistance." Her golden eyes met his. "And then you came along and complicated everything." Jim felt a surge of anger. "So, I was just a convenient escape route?" "At first," Amira admitted. "But there's something about you humans. You're unpredictable. Passionate." Her fingers brushed his arm, sending an unexpected thrill through him. "Intriguing." The tension between them crackled like static electricity. Jim found himself drawn to her, fascinated by the alien yet familiar way she moved, the subtle differences in her physiology that only enhanced her beauty. "This is a bad idea," he murmured, even as his hand rose to trace the line of her jaw. "Probably," she agreed, leaning into his touch. "But I'm tired of doing what's expected." Their first kiss was tentative, exploratory, human lips meeting alien in a dance of discovery. Then passion took over, and cultural differences ceased to matter. The void hunger. Later, lying in the dim light of the apartment's night cycle, Amira traced patterns on Jim's chest. "There's more," she said softly. "About why Carrick's wants me back so badly." "More than your tech abilities?" "Much more." She propped herself up on one elbow. "The resistance isn't just fighting Carrick's. We're fighting what he represents. There's a darkness spreading through this sector of space, Jim. Something ancient and hungry. And Carrick's is its servant, its herald." Her expression grew grave. "The Verdani have legends about it, the void hunger. It corrupts everything it touches, turns entire civilizations into slaves. Carrick's isn't just a tyrant. He's its first major victory in this sector." Jim sat up, suddenly alert. "And you can prove this?" "Better," Amira said, a fierce smile crossing her face. "I know how to stop it. But I'll need help. Human help." "What's that?" "Immunity," she said, her golden eyes gleaming. "The void hunger can't corrupt humans. Something in your neural patterns resists it. That's why Carrick's never tried to conquer Earth directly." Jim absorbed this information, his tactical mind already racing. "So, that's why he uses intermediaries for his Earth contracts." "Exactly. And why he was so angry when you betrayed him. You weren't just any mercenary. You were an ideal test subject." "Charming," Jim said, pulling her closer. "So, what's the plan?" Part 3, The Bond That Changes Everything. The station's emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow, making the shadows seem alive. Jim and Amira moved swiftly through the corridors, their steps silent but purposeful. The sound of combat echoed through the metal walls, a grim reminder of the danger closing in. The docking bay's compromised, Amira whispered, her golden eyes scanning the surroundings. I can sense them there. There's an old mining shuttle in Bay 4, Jim replied, his voice low. Not pretty, but it'll get us out. They made their way through the station's infrastructure, the sounds of battle growing louder. Jim could feel Amira's presence in his mind now that he knew what to look for, a warm, golden sensation that somehow felt right. You know, he said as they climbed through a particularly tight passage, most guys get dinner and a movie before forming a lifelong psychic bond. Humans and their primitive courtship rituals, she teased back, but he could feel her relief at his acceptance. They were nearly to Bay 4 when the first Void Hunter found them. It moved like liquid shadow, its weapons humming with dark energy. Jim fired first, his shots passing harmlessly through its form. Physical weapons don't work. Amira shouted, tossing him a small crystal device. The device pulsed in his hand, responding to something in his neural pattern. When he fired it, the energy bolt struck the Void Hunter squarely, dissolving its shadowy form with a shriek of otherworldly pain. We need to go, Amira urged. There will be more. They reached the mining shuttle just as more Void Hunters appeared. Jim laid down covering fire with the crystal weapon while Amira interfaced with the shuttle systems, bringing it online faster than any manual startup could achieve. As they broke away from the station, watching more Void Hunter ships emerge from hyperspace, both knew their adventure had just taken a turn into something far larger than either had imagined. The Thorian Nebula, a hidden sanctuary. The Thorian Nebula stretched before them like a cosmic tapestry of purple and gold, its swirling gases concealing the Resistance fleet. Jim guided their mining shuttle through the natural sensor barriers, following Amira's directions through their newfound bond. There, she said, pointing to a seemingly empty section of space. As they approached, a massive station materialized, its stealth systems rivaling anything Jim had ever encountered. Impressive, he admitted. Your Resistance has some serious backing. The third house always valued preparation, Amira replied, her voice carrying a hint of pride. Though I doubt they prepared for this particular situation. Jim felt her anxiety through their bond. Having second thoughts about bringing home a human mate? No, she said, touching his hand and sending warmth through their connection. But Verdani politics can be complicated. The station's docking procedures were rigorous, involving multiple authentication codes and biometric scans. Finally, they were cleared to land in a private bay. A welcoming committee awaited them, led by a tall, aristocratic Verdani male whose bearing screamed royalty. Ah, Prince Marin, I presume, Jim muttered. Amira squeezed his hand. Let me handle this. They descended the shuttle's ramp together. Marin's expression remained carefully neutral, though his golden eyes, darker than Amira's, widened slightly at their joined hands. Welcome, my lady, he said formally. Though I confess, this isn't quite how we planned your extraction. Plans change, Your Highness, Amira replied, her tone equally formal. May I present Jim Stark, formerly of Earth Special Operations Command. Jim raised an eyebrow at that. She'd obviously accessed his classified records. Your Highness, Marin said, studying him with unconcealed interest. A human warrior. How providential. He gestured to his attendants. Please, both of you must be tired. We've prepared quarters. One suite will suffice, Amira interrupted. Jim and I are bonded. The words fell like stones into still water. Marin's composure cracked for just a moment, showing genuine surprise. His attendants exchanged meaningful glances. I see, Marin said, recovering quickly. Then we have much to discuss. Please, join me in my private chambers. The prince's chambers, a delicate negotiation. Marin's chambers were a study in understated luxury. He dismissed his attendants and activated privacy screens before turning to face them. A biological bond, he said without preamble. With a human. Do you have any idea what this means? It means the political marriage is off the table, Amira replied coolly. Which, given the circumstances, might be for the best. The circumstances? Marin's laugh held no humor. You mean the fact that your human's impulsive rescue has accelerated Carrick's timetable? Our agents report he's mobilizing his entire fleet. Good, Jim spoke up. Better to face him now than wait for this void hunger to spread further. Marin's eyes narrowed. You told him about that? He needed to know, Amira said, moving closer to Jim. Their bond hummed with shared resolve. And he's right. We've been playing defense too long. We're not ready for a direct confrontation. You're wrong, Amira said, her voice carrying absolute conviction. What we weren't ready for was this. She gestured between herself and Jim. A human-Verdani bond changes everything. Our tech, their immunity, together, we might actually stand a chance. Marin paced the chamber, his agitation visible. The Council will never accept this. The Council can go hang themselves, Jim said cheerfully. No offense, Your Highness, but while you've been playing politics, Carrick's has been corrupting entire systems. Jim, Amira warned, but he felt her amusement through their bond. No, let him speak, Marin said, stopping his pacing. You humans have a refreshing way of cutting through diplomatic nonsense. He studied them both for a long moment. The bond is genuine? Complete, Amira confirmed. And growing stronger. Then perhaps, Marin's expression turned thoughtful, we can use this. The prophecies speak of a union between worlds that would herald the void hunger's defeat. Prophecy? Jim scoffed. You're basing strategy on ancient predictions? Says the man who formed a psychic bond with an alien princess, Amira teased. Their playful exchange was interrupted by urgent chiming from Marin's communication system. His face darkened as he read the message. Carrick's fleet has been spotted in the Outer Rim. They're not just mobilizing, they're heading straight for Earth. Earth? Jim straightened. Why would he? Because he knows, Amira said softly. He must have sensed our bond somehow. He's not just after me anymore. He wants to eliminate humanity's threat to the void hunger. He's insane, Marin declared. Earth's defenses won't stand against his corrupted fleet. Not alone, Amira cut in. But with our help. Jim felt her concern through their bond, but also something else, a growing excitement. You have an idea? Part 4, The Resistance Rises. The Resistance Station erupted into controlled chaos as multiple operations launched simultaneously. Jim coordinated with his Earth contacts while Amira worked with Verdani tech specialists, their enhanced bond allowing them to operate in perfect synchronization even when physically separated. Your human mercenary friends are interesting, Marin observed, watching the latest group arrive. The docking bay had become a melting pot of human warriors and Verdani technicians, sizing each other up with mixed curiosity and wariness. They're the best at what they do, Jim replied. Though I admit, selling them on alien bonding took some creative explanation. Yet they came, Marin said. Humans love impossible odds, Jim grinned. Tell us something can't be done, and we'll move heaven and hell to prove you wrong. Through their bond, Jim felt Amira's amusement at his statement. She was in the tech lab, overseeing the adaptation of Verdani interface systems for human neural patterns, but her consciousness brushed his like a casual caress. The relative calm was shattered by the arrival of Elder Thal, leader of the Verdani Council's conservative faction. The ancient Verdani stormed into the command center, his ceremonial robes billowing dramatically. This abomination must end, he declared, pointing at Jim. The sacred bonding rituals cannot be corrupted for military expedients. With respect, Elder, Marin began, but Thal cut him off. You've allowed this human to defile our most treasured traditions. And now you propose to replicate this aberration? Jim felt Amira's anger flare through their bond. She was already on her way, her presence in his mind growing stronger with each step. Our traditions speak of unity between worlds, Marin argued. The prophecies. The prophecies say nothing of humans. Thal spat. These primitive creatures, barely able to grasp basic quantum mechanics. These primitive creatures, Amira's voice cut through the chamber as she entered, are immune to the greatest threat our civilization has ever faced. And this particular primitive, she moved to Jim's side, taking his hand, has shown more honor and courage than many who claim noble birth. Their bond hummed with shared strength, and Jim noticed how the other Verdani in the room reacted to its visible manifestation, the subtle glow that surrounded them when in close proximity. The bond cannot be denied, Elder, Marin said quietly. You can see its power for yourself. Power born of corruption. Thal's face darkened. Guards, separate them. We must break this unnatural connection before. He never finished the sentence. The guards he brought with him stood motionless, their weapons lowered. Before what? Jim asked pleasantly. Before more of your people realize that humans might actually be worthy allies? The guards serve the resistance, Marin explained, not the council. Thal's rage transformed into something colder. You dare defy the council? The council defies reality, Amira countered. While you cling to outdated traditions, Carax's fleet approaches Earth. The void hunger grows stronger. We need humanity's help. Through their bond, Jim felt something shift in Amira's emotions, a mix of determination and mischief that made him smile in anticipation. Perhaps a demonstration is in order, she suggested. Jim, understanding, moved with her in perfect synchronization. They approached the central command console, and as Amira's fingers touched the interface, Jim placed his hand over hers. The station systems responded instantly, displays coming alive with unprecedented clarity. Through their bond, Jim could see, know, feel, the quantum network that Amira manipulated. His human consciousness provided a shield against the corruption that normally limited such deep interface. Impossible, Thal whispered. Prophesied, Marin corrected, watching in fascination. The displays showed Carax's fleet, but with a level of detail no previous scan had achieved. They could see the corruption spreading through the ship's systems and the dark energy that powered their weapons. This is what we face, Amira said, her voice carrying the weight of shared knowledge. And this, the displays shifted, showing simulated battles where human Verdani paired ships engaged the corrupted fleet, is how we defeat it. The simulations don't lie, Elder, Marin added. Combined human Verdani crews show a 300% increase in combat effectiveness. Thal stared at the displays, his resistance visibly crumbling. The Council will never. The Council can observe our first victory, Amira interrupted, or be remembered as those who stood in its way. Choose wisely. Through their bond, Jim felt her satisfaction as Thal deflated. The elder Verdani might not approve, but he couldn't deny the evidence before him. I will take this under advisement, he muttered, retreating with what dignity he could muster. As soon as he left, Jim turned to Amira. You enjoyed that way too much. Guilty, she said, her golden eyes sparkling. Ready for Phase 2? Phase 2? Phase 2 involves splitting our efforts, Marin explained. While I coordinate the fleet assembly and bonding preparations, you two will take a fast scout ship to Earth. Your mission, prepare Earth's defenses and expose Carax's corruption to human authorities. The timing will be critical, Marin warned as they prepared to depart. Our fleet will need at least 3 days to form proper bonds and synchronize systems. Earth's defenses can hold that long, Jim assured him. Especially with our enhanced intel. And with proper motivation, Amira added, her fingers dancing over the scout ship's controls. Nothing unites humans like a common enemy. Their departure was delayed by a commotion in the docking bay. Several newly arrived human mercenaries were engaged in what appeared to be a brawl with Verdani technicians. But as they got closer, they realized it was more of a sparring match, both sides testing each other's capabilities with growing respect. See? Jim grinned. They're bonding already. The scout ship slipped away from the station, its enhanced systems purring under their combined control. Through their bond, Jim and Amira operated as one, pushing the vessel to speeds it was never designed to achieve. During a quiet moment in hyperspace, Amira turned to him. You know this mission is probably a trap, right? Karax will expect us to warn Earth, Jim agreed. Probably. But he doesn't understand what he's dealing with, she said, her golden eyes gleaming. No one's ever seen what a human Verdani pair can really do. Overconfident, aren't we? Realistic, Jim replied, his hands tracing patterns on her green skin, sending shivers through their connection. You know what I love about this bond? I can feel exactly what you're thinking right now. Her response was both mental and physical, leading to a delay in their hyperspace calculations that neither particularly regretted. Later, as Earth's solar system appeared on their sensors, they detected the first signs of Karax's advanced scouts. The real war was about to begin. Ready? Amira asked, though she already knew his answer through their bond. Always, Jim replied, and they dove into the fight as one.